Hello fellow travelers, my name's SG and welcome to the channel. Today we'll be talking about Netflix's live-action One Piece series. Now, I'm a big fan of One Piece myself. I collect some of the manga and have watched the anime, so I am really eager to talk about the compare and contrast of it, along with talking about what's to come, and just an overall review of the Netflix series itself. So, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? Now, let's talk about the story, shall we? Though the story is condensed from a lot of the books, and specifically 1 through 11, I want to say, it did a very well job of representing the characters correctly. Certain things were altered for more of a suspenseful series kind of vibe. When we do get a lot of early references to stuff that wasn't introduced until later on in the story, such as Jinbei being part of our long story and such, and so on like that. But for the most part, for being an adaptation, I think they did very well trying to capture the story of each character, explaining each one of the Straw Hats' strengths and weaknesses. Luffy's was fine. It did represent a lot of his story. I could even count scene for scene what they were able to mimic. And a lot of Nami's storyline, which was pretty much the driving factor of the whole series, was very well done and very well received. It was fun, it was visually good. Certain things didn't mesh well, but I did appreciate certain other aspects of it. I do miss certain other characters, but we'll talk about that in the character breakdown. But there definitely was stuff that I think a lot of the old school fans do miss, especially from Usopp's storyline with Miss Kaya. Along with Zoro was fine. I do think the characters there were good. This overall story, I would have to rate it like a pretty good amount, like an 8 out of 10. They did very well getting a lot of the main parts in, while leaving a lot of the more voluntarily little bits they could have left out. They left out that weren't really important to the story, but would have been more fan servicey. And if they did keep in a lot of stuff, it would have taken like almost longer than they would have been able to do. So the fact that certain elements of stories were left out didn't hurt this version of it, but definitely made fans want to go back and watch the show, which I think for a live action adaptation, that's the point of it, you know, to make people want to go see the original source material, to want to watch the anime, or better yet, read the manga. And from what I've heard from a lot of other reviewers, that's what people are doing. They're going back to watching the original anime, or reading the original manga, or even just watching brief recaps, because it's more than 1,000 episodes long and more than 1,000 chapters long. It's going to be a while before anybody catches up to the series. The one aspect I will say I felt people really felt was missing was the original storyline for when they meet Sanji. Like the invading pirates at the restaurant, I think that did leave a little bit of a distaste for some. I mean, I know why they cut it out. It wasn't necessary, and if the most important part was the fight with Mihawk and Zoro. But it still, was missing. Not to say that it wasn't there. We do see them as background characters as Mihawk is hunting them. We even see like the one with the shields all over his body in the background, which is funny to add and show that they did read the material and that it was there. It's just that it wasn't important enough to actually be in the overall story, which is fair. Which is fair, I think. The aspect I think everybody's really in debate about was Kobe's storyline with Garp, because that wasn't in the original series. It was much more played in the background. But I think what they did was follow more of the cover stories, the short stories that are left in the cover of each chapter. Sometimes Oda leaves like a small snippet of a story that can be followed, and it's pretty funny. There was a similar story with Kobe, like transporting Captain Morgan with Captain Morgan's son, and it was a bit of a story in the cover story, which is funny. They just increased it and really showed like why Garp chose Kobe, because we never really get an explanation other than that. So it's just a fun little add-on, and it does add more to the story as to why they're a presence that will probably come back in the future. Well, they will come back in the future. if they do the Frankie storyline next season, which I don't think they will. But overall, this season was good. It was fun. It kept to the main points of One Piece. It was a good adaptation, which says a lot because a lot of anime adaptations don't really follow that formula. So overall, it was really good. The characters were all there, actually. I think they chose a really good cast. I think that they weren't great. It was definitely cheesy, like Doctor Who level of cheesy, but they weren't terrible. They were definitely the characters they were supposed to be representing. You could tell who was Luffy. Zoro did fine. Zoro is actually the breakout character I think everybody really liked in this series, which is pretty good because he was in the Full Metal Alchemist live action, which is pretty cool. We did get Usopp. Nami was very well done, I think, for year One Piece, because I think that's what everybody forgets is that Nami's character does change a lot throughout One Piece, but this interpretation of her definitely fits year one One Piece. Captain Morgan and Arlong, I can see people were a little confused about because they weren't as big as they were in the actual manga or anime, because I think that's just a stylistic choice in the books and in the cartoons, because they're supposed to be big and imposing. You're supposed to get this idea that they're big threatening people, but that's not the world that they're trying to represent. They're trying to see them as more of being actual people, being legitimate characters. They were presented very well overall, I think, and they were a little bit more threatening, and you could see their personalities come out a little bit more than they did in the books. But like I said, their best representations are in the books and anime. But I'm just saying they felt right in this scenario. Arlong, it was more of a character in this series than he was, I think, in the original. But that's because they're trying to make him more of the big bad of this season. Not to say that what he did in the manga wasn't bad. I mean, that's what made him hate. That's what made him hated amongst the fans. The whole Nami storyline, and I think they did represent how much of a threat he was, how sadistic he was, and how cruel he was overall. So, I think everything they did was fine, and even the representation that what he was with Jinbei, which will come in a little later, definitely played more of a role into his character in this version than anything else. But overall, all the characters hit their marks. All of them knocked it out of the park. I don't really have an argument about this one or that one. I do think that certain elements of the stories could be added later on, but I do think it was a fine first few episodes, and I do hope that there's more coming along, because Kobe's character was the same overall, and we do get Morgan's son becoming more of a character in the story than he was in the books, because we do see him again, but rather we see his progression as becoming a real friend to Kobe in the Netflix series. As for Garp, I do think it's funny the route they took him in the series, because he feels more like a General Ross to a Hulk situation, that it was not an exact copy of the manga, because he doesn't show up till Frankie's storyline, really, even at the end of that, and that's where we don't really get that bombshell of him being Luffy's grandpa until that point. But I think overall it was a good idea and really helped solidify Luffy's character in this scenario. I think it was fun, it was a creative idea, and really showed how much Garp cared for Luffy overall, and how much Luffy really valued his dream overall. Now, I feel I must talk about the settings, because a lot of the scenery that we see throughout the Netflix series are vastly different compared to the manga and anime. Like Luffy's hometown looking like a bunch of huts rather than actual buildings was definitely something that a lot of people noticed right off the bat. Like in the original manga, they were set more as real taverns, as more real, real locations, real buildings you would see in the olden pirate time situation. This, they tried to do more of an idealized version of a Pirates of the Caribbean surrounding. They tried to make the idea that you could tell that these places were poorer than usual. Not to say all of them are like that, because a lot of the main sets were very well done and almost replicas of the actual manga and such. But it was definitely something to talk about, the way they went upon it. I do feel like a lot of the scenery could have been better if they were like in legitimate buildings rather than in what they did show. It was probably to save money for the bigger aspects, and I could tell that that's probably the overall issue with it. Not to say it ruined the whole experience for a One Piece fan. It didn't. I think it fit well, and I think they had fun with it. So, and it did make more for the action scenes and cameras to actually be able to expand and see the fights actually happening instead of being behind closed doors situation. So, not really a big nitpick, but definitely a noticeable one that I'm sure a lot of people have already picked up on. Now, this being a live action adaptation, there are plenty of references that have been made to the, issues 1 through 11, like I said. So we're going to talk about certain things that are meant to be for later situation. Like I said, the Arlong bit where he mentions Jinbei as being a warlord, that wasn't really mentioned in the first appearance of Arlong. It was more brought during the Boa Hancock arc, the Amazon Island storyline, which is a neat touch because it really makes more world building in this series. There were certain other ones we saw, like Nami reading about a city of gold that lost in the sea, which could be a reference to the One Piece Heart of Gold movie, where the a city of gold went missing, and they believed it got sunk to the sea, but really was eaten by a giant fish. So that's a fun reference to put in there, and it works in the sense that it's just a storybook in this. There were a few others that worked, like the admirals and the warlords were mentioned far earlier in the story than they were in the original, but it's because the series has the gift of hindsight. The series has already almost completed itself, so they naturally have the upper hand with being able to be more world building than. I know I may have missed a lot, so if some of you want to tell me if there's a specific hidden one that I didn't count, please leave it down in the comments. I would really like to hear, because I'm really interested in all the Easter eggs they added into the show. Now, if I had to say what we would be seeing for the next season, I can guarantee that the first episode will be Logtown. We'll see Buggy coming in with a lot of his crew, not a lot of his crew back, but we will see him coming in to try to kill Luffy again, along with Smoker being there to kind of act like the next Garp to hunt down Luffy. I think for the remainder of the series, actually, because I think that would be more interesting, honestly. And of course, we will see Monkey D. Dragon coming in, Luffy's father. So, without a doubt, I think Logtown will count as a lot of things, as a recap episode, and will be more leading towards what's coming next in the season forward. I do think we will see Chopper that season, because that would fit with story-wise for the most part. Because maybe the Grand Line will make Nami sick, like usual, or something along those lines. But we will definitely see the Alabasta arc, and I think Robin will definitely be the main story in this season, in that second season. So I think Robin will definitely be a fun character to bring in. Frankie, I can't say for a fact he's gonna be in the next season. I think that they'll hint at it. Maybe the Mary crashes on an island, and that will be the catalyst for the third season. But I can say without certainty that we will have at least Robin and Chopper for sure, because that just fits story wise. And they probably will cut a lot out But I think Crocodile being the next antagonist definitely fits this more than anything else. Plus, you gotta bring in the Chopper meme face. Everybody loves sad Chopper for some reason. They don't love him being sad, but they love the image of him being sad. I hope they can do it right, and I hope it's a fun little East nod to the meme culture of it all. The One Piece Netflix series is a great adaptation. It's not perfect, but like most anime adaptations, it's not meant to be perfect. It's meant to tell the story in a shorter, simplified way, while at the same time trying to be faithful to the content it comes from. And I think it did a lot of that. I think it nailed it to a T. I do think there are certain things that could have been kept in and certain things that could have been kept out, but in the grand scheme of things, those all seem very small and unimportant at the end of the day. This was a fun watch. The characters were there. The actors brought in their A game, at least, to where it was cheesy, but a fun cheesy. It didn't take you out of the story at all. I do see a lot of potential in the future, and I do hope that they continue doing at least a season 2 and 3, because I know a lot of fans would really like to see Robin, Chopper, Frankie, and maybe even Brooke for a Thriller Bark arc. I'm not sure if they can get that far, but it'd be fun, and I do definitely hope that we do see more Admirals in the future. We do see Kobe's storyline progress a little bit, probably not full way, but we will see him becoming more as a Marine and more of an important figure in Luffy's life. The references are there, the storyline's good, and I do see a lot of potential in this, and the cast seem that they're having a blast. You could definitely tell this is a labor of love on everyone's end. Alright, I hope you guys liked today's video. I know I enjoyed doing it. I know this was a fun topic to talk about. I know a lot of people have already done it, but I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. Sorry if this one seemed a little later than most. I know I had some technical issues on my end, couldn't control it, but better late than never. Thank you again for listening. Please like and subscribe down below if you like this video. I'd really appreciate it. Let's see how far we can get by the end of the year. Hope to see you guys again next week where we do another poem and another review. See ya. Have a great day.